harp sound, harp sound, harp sound, harp sound. Was it the Roses are red, violets are blue. This is the Valentine's month episode, and this poem doesn't rhyme.
They never do.
That's my theme song. It's not even a song. It's not even a poem.
Welcome, fellow nerds.
Yeah, welcome, fellow nerds, to another episode of The Writ Wit, the show where we ask life's most important questions like, why the f*** is my hair already thinning? I'm only 25, damn it!
Life happens to all of us in stages.
Don't worry, I'm going to censor that out. For the kids in the show. I'm sorry, it's really bothering me.
Yeah, I get it. I understand. I understand. Because remember, I'm younger than you. Anyway.
Is your hair already thinning too?
Well, the hairline, I think it's receding. But anyway, it's not that big of a deal at the moment.
I got a haircut last week, and she told me about my hairline already thinning. Like, how old are you? And I'm like, I'm only 25. It's like, oh god. I'm like, yeah, please tell me more about that. Just say, oh, that's where you want to hear your barber to say, oh god.
You're inspired and then barber to new heights. Anyway, we always start our segments with talking about what we're going to rip off. Wait,
hang on.
Month. What?
How was your Valentine's Day?
Oh, you mean my Singles Awareness Day?
Exactly. Singles for life, bro. High five. I know. Oh, by the way, you're back in Japan now, so we're both alone. We can't even be each other's Valentines.
Yeah, I know. It's so sad.
Alright.
I'll get over it.
Yeah, let's do it. Alright, what are we going to rip off this week? You go first.
Sure. I actually watched a show, this is a couple of years ago, but I was doing some research on it recently, and I was fascinated by the idea behind the main villain of this tokusatsu show that I watched. And it's this villain.
So you're ripping off a character, not just a work. I like that.
Well, yes, but I'll get into that in a little bit. Anyway, the character in this case, he has the power to reverse time. He uses a special device to turn time back, and so he's using it as a means to guarantee the future that he wants. Well, in essence,
that always sounds like it'll end well.
The idea that I'm trying to take from it here is that, there's this character who might be a good person naturally, but when given this amazing ability to make time, he starts getting very particular about the time that he wants to keep, and so he devolves in a way into. He
becomes a massive control freak.
He becomes a very big control freak. So people who are close to him, if they die, he just reverses time.
There's no butterfly effect going on here.
If he gets sick eating food, maybe he'll reverse time and get to that point. But anyway, that idea, it's at least an antagonist. I don't know if it becomes a full story idea, although this is the same guy. That is an interesting idea.
Like, we always talk about, you shouldn't time travel because you don't want to create a paradox and then destroy the universe. But what if you didn't? What if you just changed the universe? If you go back in time and change something, that sounds even scarier, honestly.
That's fair.
I mean, okay, maybe not, because one of them involves everything just being destroyed. But
that is fair.
At least there'd be a merciful, quick death for everyone.
Right. The other way, however, the thing that's most important here is to realize that the road to hell paved with good intentions, that kind of a thing.
Right. Which we'll talk a little bit about later, I think.
It's at least an antagonist for a story idea that I haven't done yet. But consider, this is the same person who came up with an original Power Rangers series based solely on the color available in a certain Skittles pack.
This was you. This wasn't the villain you're talking about. The creator.
No, not the villain. I'm just saying that this might be the start of some story idea that I get to. Anyway, let's hear what you're ripping off from this week / month / whatever.
All right, well, here's what we rip off. Guess what, Matt? I'm reading a book.
What?
I know. I'm the worst author ever, because the advice for every author gives to people who want to be a writer is, well, read. You gotta read. I don't read.
I see.
I mean, I get my creative inspiration from other works. I think that's more what they mean, or at least that's how I interpret it.
Well, that's the idea. You see what you like.
So I'm rereading, I should say, this series by one of our favorite authors, both of you and I, T.A. Barron, The Great Tree of Avalon. It's a sequel series to his Lost Years of Merlin that you've read. I don't think you've read this one. It's pretty good. I really like it. The idea behind it, it's sort of like Norse mythology in that the world is a tree. what happens here is that so in between the previous series, The Lost Years of Merlin, and this series, The Great Chief of Avalon, Merlin plants a seed onto this dead world of whatever the world was in the last one. It began with an F. I don't remember what it was called. Finkyra, that's how it was, yes. It was dead, but he made it reborn by turning it into this tree of Avalon. And this tree is enormous.
Sure.
Like,
well, it wouldn't be the
hundreds
great
upon
tree
hundreds of miles
enormous.
tall. But unlike Norse mythology, though, where like there's different worlds on each of the branches, where pretty much all the humans and other people and a lot of the other not too mystical races live on the roots, and all the roots are different. And like there's a water root, there's a wood root, and as you get further up, it gets more mystical. And here's the thing I think is really cool about it: the stars from the roots, they look just like stars, but as you get closer up, you realize they're just the tips of the branches. Like the constellations are the way the branches are faded or look from the floor. And I think that's a really cool idea.
That is incredible. I haven't read The Great Tree of Avalon. I don't know why, because T.A. Barron is an amazing author, but...
Well, like, at the beginning, the main character, Tamwin, he talks about he wonders if anyone could travel to the stars. And when being my natural sci-fi self, I was thinking, really? They're going to bring spaceships into this? But no, they do it in a far more interesting way.
Well, yeah, they just climb up the tree. But anyways...
I mean, they climb up the hundreds upon hundreds, if not thousands of miles tall tree.
All right,
Anyways, I bring this up, though, because... The reason why I'll rip this off is because one of T.A. Barron's strongest skills is world building. He can make a world so diverse and natural and wondrous. Like, he's really good at showing wonder to the reader. Like, this is... Like, he did that a lot in the last series, too. So
I was reading I remember reading The Lost Years of Merlin that he would, establish in each of the books, they had a map of Finkyra. And even though you wouldn't see necessarily certain places in one book, it would be there when you got back to it later. And I love that payoff.
That's pretty cool. And also, one thing, the way this works, so this is a trilogy. Like, The Lost Years of Merlin was 5 books, but this is 3.
Right.
Each book expands the map. The first book, the only map is the roots. The second book, it's the roots and the trunk. And then the third book, it's the roots, the trunk, and the tree, and the branches with the stars. And that's where you see all the constellations that are in the branches. So, it's pretty cool. I also finally watched, based on your recommendation from last episode, I watched the Ratchet and Clank movie. As a Ratchet and Clank fan, I liked all the numerous shout-outs to the series.
Right.
I didn't really care for it too much, though, honestly. I think it was too childish. There were a few jokes, though, that I really liked. I think my favorite one was when, in this action scene at the beginning, this one alien falls off a cliff and does the classic Wilhelm scream, but this other alien reaches out futilely and it's like, oh no, Wilhelm! But I'm like, that's really funny.
Yeah.
But other than that, yeah, I wouldn't watch it again. It was kind of too childish to me.
I didn't suggest that you needed to watch it more than once, because I wasn't...
No, I'm glad I watched it, but
I wasn't terribly impressed with it myself. I mean, as we mentioned in the Witties, it was both in best new work of the year and worst new work of the year.
No, it was in worst and most underrated.
Oh, okay, most underrated. Okay, yeah. But anyway, I mean, as
the
a fan, I'm really glad that I watched it. But there's really no hook for me to watch it again. Now, I've seen it once.
Right.
I've seen it enough. Unlike the games, which I find a lot of replayability value, though.
Speaking of the game, I won't get into it too much, but I recently bought a PS4, and the game itself is pretty good. Like, I won't get too much into it because I know you'll get jealous. you in Japan. But the game itself is really good. The nice thing is that they incorporate a lot of clips from the movie as cutscenes, so that's kind of cool. Kind of makes it all more interconnected.
So you saw the movie first, or did you watch the...
No, I saw the movie first. The movie first. Now, in order not to talk too much, so we can move on to the next episode, I'll save this next one for the episode after this one. Well, I'll get more to detail. But, real quickly, I just finished Moana, like, tonight. I was watching it, and I liked it. I liked it a lot. However, the one comment I'll make before we move on, this bothered me way more than it should have. Near the end, I don't want to spoil too much, but near the end, near the very end, the way I'm not going to spoil is by not giving out details. Moana inadvertently puts to a halt a generations-long family tradition due to structural problems. I'll just leave it at that. And if you've seen the movie, you should know what I'm talking about. That bothered me way more than it should have.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
You know what I'm talking about?
That's pretty normal. It's been long enough that I don't remember all the specifics, but
it involves a shell. Let me just put it that way. A shell.
Right.
Structural. Anyways.
You don't need to remind me. It's okay.
Shall we move on to this month's topic?
Sure. I think that now that we've discussed what we're ripping off, which has nothing to do with what we're going to talk about in either case.
Wait. Hey. Segue.
Segue?
So,
how?
Moana is a very lighthearted story, isn't it?
Oh, jeez, you did that.
Totally unplanned, by the way. Perfectly calculated.
It was a pretty perfect segue. No, I was going to make the joke that because we were both single on Valentine's Day, that we must be light of heart.
Well, hey, maybe I should mention something.
Oh, you're going to finally tell me about this now.
Yes,
no.
I met a girl, and I really love her. Here's the thing, though. I stole her from you.
Oh, you stole her from me. Is that the girl called Loneliness?
Oh! Yes, that is her name.
Anyways.
Yes, that's her name. Loneliness, June Isabella, the third.
June
She's a
Isabella.
great gal.
Why is her last name Isabella when her first name is Loneliness? I don't understand. But anyway,
Isabella
point being,
son, Isabella daughter. All right, go.
The point being that we are talking about stories that are light-hearted. Hard, obviously, in honor of Valentine's.
We don't know anything about romance. Like I said in the episode 2, I think, we've both been in one relationship, and we're not experts on romance, and we're not experts on romantic stories.
Yeah, and, romantic stories, there's certainly a big market for those kind of things because we all like hearing about stories that end happily with the couple in love and whatnot, but it's not our forte, so we're just going to talk about light-hearted stories. And, light-hearted probably has a different definition for a lot of people. So, we have to start this conversation by asking the question, what constitutes light-hearted?
Because, yeah, it's a much broader thing than you might think. Like, I don't think it just means kid-friendly, but we'll get into that later. I also don't think it just means funny. But, again, we'll get into that later. Yeah. Although, I guess, speaking of funny, we should maybe mention, can it have any sad moments? I feel like it can, but there's probably a limit.
Is there a limit? And what is that limit? I tend to agree with you that there can be sad elements to it, but I think if you're going to have like a truly sad moment, like a death or something, that you can only have a handful before it stops being lighthearted.
Right. The thing is, the Don Bluth mentality for almost all of his films, especially his ones from the 80s, are sad, 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 happy ending. It's just it's just not even a roller coaster. It's a descent into hell. Traumatizes all the kids that watch it up until the ending where everything's okay.
Sudden lift till back up to heaven, yeah.
I don't think that counts then. Now, Don Bluth's later movies, like A Troll in Central Park, yeah, they're probably lighthearted. But you tell me American Tail is lighthearted.
No, I wasn't going to tell you that. You might have heard me say that.
The sequels are probably pretty lighthearted.
Listeners might have heard me say American Tail Land Before Time when you first started talking about Don Bluth, Donald. Anyways, I always think of a certain, I think of the Disney princess films and, maybe Pixar as companies that really have a lot of lighthearted fare. I mean, it's not perfect. Not all of them are, of course.
Yeah, but, some of them I think they're all pretty lighthearted. At the very least, they have all lighthearted moments, but some of them really tip the line. Like Up, for instance. Up has a lot of lighthearted elements.
Squirrel!
It has these talking dogs. I mean, they talk through a collar that this person controls from, and it's really funny. And it has this giant, colorful bird, but at the same time, it deals with heavy stuff. Like this old man who lost his wife a while ago, and he's still mourning for her, and he feels like he doesn't have really a reason to live, but then he decides to go on their final destination trip that they go to, and he can't, and he learns to the message at the end is, these are our adventures, now go make your own. So he moves on. He never forgets his wife, but he moves on. That's heavy stuff.
Sure, but is it the most important part of the story?
I'd argue
when
yes,
you talk about morals, you talk about messages being left with an audience, and I think if that's the main selling point, that it certainly could. I think
it's the main selling point for the adults. The kids go and like to watch the talking dogs, and the junior scout who's we're best friends to all the animals.
Full disclaimer, I haven't actually experienced many of Pixar's films.
That's right, because you don't watch anything ever. I would consider a large amount
of their catalog to be lighthearted, but I haven't seen Up as one example.
Why would you have seen Up? That would make too much sense.
Why? Because that would make too much sense?
Yeah, it's just only a classic movie.
Well,
you haven't seen any classic
whose
movies,
definition
though.
of classic? But the issue
It's a
here
modern
is not
classic.
that. I mean, like, I think there's a certain amount of stuff we can assume about the audience. The audience is not going to enjoy, shall we say, heavy stuff a lot, unless you package it in bright colors and flashy elements, kind of like the giant bird and such.
Right.
But, you know, other than, I mean, if you have a handful of sad moments, that doesn't necessarily take it out of being lighthearted.
Oh,
right?
no, absolutely.
I think
not.
you can have a handful of sad moments, but if you have more than a handful, you're passing into other realms, other type of things. Otherwise, you know, lighthearted stuff,
yeah,
I think it's more family-friendly humor.
Right.
More lighter concepts.
See, I disagree on family-friendly humor. We'll get to that. Like,
all right.
I think...
well, okay, typically, I did say typically, because I know exactly what you're thinking of.
And I don't think... I'm also going to discount humor. I don't think lighthearted always means funny. I think they go hand in hand quite a bit. But, like, my argument for this is that look at a lot of stuff for, like, little kids. Like, we're talking about shows that you'd see on Disney Junior, or like those, like Roly Poly Oly. That's from way back in the day when I was a kid. But
yeah,
that is very lighthearted. I don't think it was meant to be very funny. It was meant just to be more things to entertain your kids for 20 minutes.
Well, back to the idea of light concepts. You're not asking them to delve too deep into the emotional thing. You're not asking them to process too much. That kind of stuff is lighthearted. It doesn't have to be funny, though.
Right.
I'm just saying if there is humor, that it would be family-friendly.
Right. Well, actually, I don't do that either. Oh, maybe not.
Lighthearted doesn't necessarily preclude unfunny.
Right.
As long as the humor is family-friendly, the idea is family-friendly, it doesn't have to be funny and still can be lighthearted. If you have weighty concepts... well, you know, that doesn't really seem light to me, does it?
Well, you know, I'm gonna disagree here. All
right.
Actually, I think we're gonna have to skip a little in our notes here, because I feel like this is a better point to go on forward rather than what we have here, because I think we're segueing into it already. I don't think lighthearted always means kid friendly. The example I give is this first-person shooter called Team Fortress 2. Now, I heard you never played it, or not even familiar with it.
Yep.
I'll tell you what, Google Meet the Team. I mean, don't do it now, but...
Meet the Team?
Team on Team Fortress 2, because the whole point... because it's your favorite kind of game. It's a hero shooter, like Overwatch. It's what popularized it back in the day.
My favorite kind of game, right. Mr. Putting it in the Witties is the best work of 2016.
One of the best. Wait, no.
It's my favorite kind of game.
Right, it is. I mean, you just haven't realized it yet. You'll learn. Anyway.
I'm in denial.
So far, yes. But anyways, that's not the point. So, it's rated M. It's very bloody, but the jokes are hilarious, and it's very silly. Like, they're fighting for no reason. Like, there's these very diverse characters. There's, like, the sniper, the medic, the scout, the engineer, the pyro.
You would think a medic is kind of impossible to use in a concept that you're just shooting him up. I mean, yeah, it's obviously got an important tactical function, but why the heck is there a medic on a field like that?
I mean, because he has this experimental gun that just, he fires it, and then they're automatically better. And also, he's, like...
I was going to make a comment relating to a different story of ours, but that's beside the point for now.
Right.
Anyway.
Well, the point is, it's really bloody. Like, when people get shot, there's like... but
gushing blood.
Yeah, but, like, they make fun of it all the time, and there's... And the reason why I think it's lighthearted, though, is because, sort of like the Looney Tunes cartoons of old, there's no consequences. People
that's fair.
Get bloody, and people get exploded constantly. There's always a backup. There's always... someone to keep this eternal red versus blue fight going.
Unforeseen consequences.
Like
there's also the this will make kids more violent consequence. There's this.
There's no consequences in story. Like just because this pyro gets horribly killed, he's fine later. So that's why I think it's lighthearted. There's no serious consequences in story.
Well, sure. I mean, I mentioned earlier, lighthearted is light on concept. You know, you aren't asking the consumer to get too emotional. There aren't so many sad moments that they stop thinking about how nice it is.
Right.
And they don't have to really think that much.
Right.
It's a shoot 'em up game. The point is simple. You point, you fire, you hope to win.
Especially if you're
right?
the heavy who he just stands there, gets a really big gun, and goes. It's
He just wastes people. That's fair. But, because it involves not being so crazy emotional, like depressed emotional, and it doesn't require much thought, this is why lighthearted gets associated with kid-friendly. But I don't think that means all the time.
Right, exactly. Like, this is... I mean, I'm sure there are other exceptions, but this is the one I think... What about Family Guy? I know some of the humor can get pretty dark. I'm sure you haven't seen a lot of it, but...
I've seen more of it than you have, I bet.
I've seen a few episodes. But okay, so do you think that's lighthearted? I know some of the jokes can get pretty morbid, but... I definitely don't think South Park is lighthearted.
I think it's intended as lighthearted humor.
Right.
Family Guy and American Dad are kind of that same... I mean, Seth MacFarlane specializes in that kind of content. And it's certainly not kid-friendly.
Right, that's what I'm saying, so yeah.
But it is lighthearted. You have to have a certain adult sense of humor about it, but one of the main characters in Family Guy is this... Well, he's an idiot. If you don't know, Peter Griffin, look him up. He's hilarious. He doesn't really understand much of the way the world goes on, but he's doing the best he can, and the humor that results in those situations that it comes from is what makes that show not only successful but really popular, because it's that funny.
Well, plus there's a dog
it doesn't take very much to watch
and who talks.
It doesn't take very much to understand. You don't have crippling sadness in the regular episode. It's a very light-hearted fare, not kid-friendly by any means, but very light-hearted fare. But are they always funny?
Like I said, no, because I think they, like, for more super kiddie stuff, they don't try to be funny, they try to be lighthearted. I don't know. I need to think of another example, but no, I don't think...
I mean, I expect that most of the lighthearted things are going to be funnier than, like, serious fare.
I think lighthearted often means funny. However, funny only sometimes means lighthearted, so... There's a lot of dark comedies out there.
Well, and consider humor is kind of universal, right? Compared to lighthearted is just an opinion, in a way. We might consider something as lighthearted that someone else might say is not at all. But humor... Well, I mean, humor
I think
is
it's the whole
point,
humor of first world problems, I think, is sort of like that. Oh no, I have to move my laptop over here because the outlet that I want is right there, but my computer is about to run out of batteries, but I don't want to move.
Oh no, I have to turn a fan on so I can actually use my computer as long as I want
Speaking of which, how's that doing?
I think it's going fine. It doesn't seem to be having any problems.
Listeners, if there's a big cut, I mean, I'll try to edit it out as best as I can, but now I guess I don't have to because I'm telling you.
Yeah, you're not exactly...
His computer might possibly shut off in the middle of recording, so... Here's the hoping that doesn't work.
Difficulties of doing international junk. It's not always nice.
Clap your hands.
That's not lighthearted, actually, at all.
Anyways. Well, so... I'm trying to figure out a way to segue from that. Okay, oh, no, I got it. If this records the whole thing without turning off, I'd say this recording of the podcast has a happy ending, doesn't it?
I tell you
and
what,
on that
I don't know if I've met people who have more forced segues than you do.
And on that unforced, totally natural note...
Totally natural, yeah.
Do lighthearted stories always have happy endings?
I have my opinion, but I'm curious to see what you think.
I think yes. There can be bittersweet parts of the ending, but I think overall the conclusion has to be overall positive. Because I feel like if you have a lighthearted story overall, but it ends kind of sad, unless it's like a satire. Like, I haven't seen... Okay, in terms of classic movie, I've never seen Doctor Strangelove, but from what I'm told... The ending of it involves all the nukes going off and just the world being destroyed, but there's like a fun song being played during it, or the footage of all the nukes. That sounds satirical to me, but it also sounds lighthearted. But it's not lighthearted.
Well, sure, but is that really a happy ending?
It's not a happy ending at all. Literally everyone dies. So, I don't think that's lighthearted. But it's... So I'm saying, like, the point that since it's trying to do a funny song, it's trying to seem lighthearted, but it's doing it in a satirical way, so it's not. So I think, yes... I
happen to agree with you on the happy ending thing, but I just want to point out that just having a happy ending doesn't necessarily mean it's lighthearted. Go back to American Tail.
Yeah, Don Bluth. Oh, I'm psychologically damaged, but I require so much therapy, but at least Fievel finally found his family. And the Statue of Liberty
Yeah.
winked at him. How nice. I think that's what I did. I mean, I haven't seen it in many years.
I can't remember. I honestly...
I remember that from my
about
childhood,
American
but I
Tail is
remember a
the
lot
name.
of weird things from my childhood that weren't real. You know, when I was a kid, I used to think
Well,
that stoplights had little goblins in them that had filtered lights.
stop lights?
Yeah, they had each
jeez.
segment, the red one, the yellow one, the green one, had a little goblin inside of it that held a filtered light, and that's how it worked.
I see.
I mean, I didn't really think that's what it was.
Not
But that's a
necessarily a bad
funny image I
idea,
came
but-
up with as a kid, because I've always been creative. Not to brag.
Well, and there's nothing wrong with that. At least being creative.
I'm more
Maybe
creative
the
than you
bragging
are.
thing.
That's me bragging.
The humble brag. Well, we're both better than whoever's listening, so what does it matter?
And I'm better than you, so that means I'm better than everyone.
I don't know about everyone, but
Sorry.
I don't think it works like the transitive property in math.
Yeah, it is the
That's
transitive
the
property.
case. If A equals B and B equals C, then A equals C. That's the
Thank you
transitive
for
property.
explaining the joke.
You were asking what the transitive property was. Why shouldn't I explain it?
No, I didn't. I
Yeah,
was.
you did. You assumed, based on the transitive property, that because you're better than me and we're better than you, that you're better than everyone.
Yes. Moving on.
But anyways, it's one of this. Back to our happy endings question. You know, there's a reason that well, okay, maybe not all, but certainly the bulk of fairy tales end with the happily ever after thing.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, even if it wouldn't happen that way in real life, even if the stories that our Disney movies, our Pixar movies are based on don't actually work out so nicely in real life,
Right.
you know, lighthearted fare, they can't really end with an emotional downturn, can they?
Because it's not
The
lighthearted.
ending
Like, I feel
of
like the ending defines
The ending
a
of Up
story.
is
A
positive.
story's tone is specifically.
Well, I mean, consider the parts that are going to stick with a consumer most.
Mm-hmm.
You've got the beginning, you've got the end. Maybe a moment, a flashpoint moment in the middle, or the climax.
Right. Well, there can be like a big action sequence in the middle of a lot of movies that are like,
Right.
oh, that's
No, I'm saying the flashpoint moments though.
Right.
But other than that, the viewers are going to remember the beginning. They're going to remember the end. The stuff in the middle kind of goes away. It's
It
kind of
depends,
like
but
whether.
yes.
It's kind of like when we think about how does Toy Story end, but we don't really remember how exactly they get there. To use another Pixar film.
Which one? Because I feel like Toy Story 3
Well,
isn't
the
lighthearted.
first one. I haven't seen
Like,
Toy Story 3,
Oh,
so I can't
right.
use that.
Okay, well, spoiler alert, they all get burned into incinerator. Is that true? You find out.
You find out. I have no reason to know. But anyway,
All right,
it's
well-
one of those. But, you know, if it doesn't end happily, it's kind of hard to consider it lighthearted.
Okay, but I think the ending defines the whole story, even if the whole story is the way it is. Like, I feel like, okay, spoiler alert, they didn't all die in the incinerator. I mean, in case you were concerned. But
I wasn't.
But
anyway.
let's say if they had. Let's say because there actually is a point where they almost get burned in an incinerator, but then they get saved, right? And it's a pretty dark moment because they all kind of like accept their fate and they all hold hands, but then they get saved. Fun moment. Anyways, I mean, not fun, but it. Anyways, let's say they did. Let's say they didn't get
in
saved.
its own way.
The whole Toy Story trilogy, for a lot of people, would be unwatchable because they knew the fate of all these toys.
Wasn't it you that wouldn't read the Harry Potter series until you knew Harry survived?
Yes, I'm not going to deny that. We all have our faults.
Well, I don't know if it's necessarily a fault.
Okay,
but
well,
like,
here's a
it
weird
goes
thing about
right
me.
to your point.
I like spoilers.
Yeah, that's true.
Everyone
You
thinks
spoiled
I'm
the end
weird.
just to figure out whether it was worth reading the rest of the series, which I find ludicrous. But
Everyone
yeah.
thinks I'm weird,
I mean,
but the thing is, if I found out, okay, I don't want to spoil Harry Potter. Okay, I guess you kind of did by saying, listeners know I've already read it, and listeners know. So therefore, since you said I didn't read it until after I found out, you spoiled it for everyone. Harry doesn't die.
Well,
at the
come
end.
on, just use your editing magic. We've spoiled Harry Potter like 17 different times.
Okay, so Harry Potter doesn't
5
die.
episodes.
All right, he lives. He has how many kids? You know, it doesn't matter. Okay, so
I remember, but I'm not going to say it in case you don't. But
all right. Anyways,
it's one of
so
those things like,
what is the point is though? Like, if he had died, I wouldn't wanted to waste my time with the series because I would have been dreading that whole thing. So that's why I like spoilers.
I don't see why you would regret reading it the first time.
No.
Because, you know, the adventure that she takes you on is well worth it. I mean,
It's
this
not
is
about
my
the destination;
opinion
it's
on-
about the journey.
But I mean, with stories in general, be they in movie form, comic book form, maybe just regular old novel form, you know, it's nice to spend the time figuring out the world, getting invested in the characters, and hopefully it works out. It doesn't always, but it's the same with life, right?
Right.
Now, for lighthearted fare, you want it to end well.
Right.
But that doesn't mean you're guaranteed a happy ending. There are going to be parts of it that aren't as nice. There are going to be parts of it that aren't as good. That bittersweet angle.
Okay, well here's
Grandpa
an example I can
died,
think of.
but we're making the best of life without him.
Here's an example I can think of. One of the more lighthearted Disney movies is Aladdin. It's very lighthearted. Hardly anyone would ever tell you it's dark, right?
Fair.
Now, I'd argue that one of the direct-to-video sequels is kind of dark. The Aladdin and the King of Thieves, because there's a villain in it with the claws of Wolverine who gets turned to gold. Spoiler alert for that direct-to-DVD movie from 20 years ago.
Wow, how do you not care about spoilers like that, but you care about spoiling Harry Potter, for God's sake?
Anyways,
what's wrong with you?
But at the end of the first Aladdin, the genie departs them because he wants to go see the world because he's free, right?
He's free, right? You can do that.
But so I guess that's happy overall. But he and Aladdin, at least temporarily, say goodbye. So that's a little bittersweet. It's just the tiniest bit. So
yeah. However, it's one of those things that it doesn't bog down the rest of the ending.
Right.
Aladdin ends up with Jasmine, and they end up happy. And if it wasn't for Genie leaving, it would be perfectly fine.
And even then, Genie gets to do what he wants, and he'll come back.
Right. So how is that a bad thing?
As he did in Return of Jafar. The first direct-to-video sequel. The second Aladdin movie. And the most epic trilogy of all time. Suck it, Lord of the Rings.
Most epic.
No.
Yeah. It certainly wasn't as long. If you measure epicness and how long it is, then it doesn't hold a candle to
I
Lord
think
of the Rings.
all three Aladdin movies combined probably aren't the same length as one of the Lord of the Rings movies, especially not extended editions.
Well, I was about to say it's probably shorter than Two Towers. I don't know about Return. I don't know about
Return of the King
Ring, but
non-extended edition is 200 minutes.
I don't remember how long the Aladdin movies are to compare. But anyway, the point being, I don't think that lighthearted fare can end with a cliffhanger because, if it's truly an ending, if it's not like a stepping off point to something else to continue the saga, it can't end on a cliffhanger. And it can't end on an emotional downturn, like a true emotional downturn.
Back to Ratchet and Clank,
there has to be some reconciliation. There has to be some chance for the main character to get over this tragedy, rather than I'm still not over the fact that this person is gone, and this is where the story ends, and we'll never see anything else of it again.
I think cliffhangers are okay. They're the exception because it has the promise that things will get better eventually. It's not an ending, really.
When I talk about lighthearted fare, though, I'm referring more to the whole, not to individual
right,
entries.
But I'm saying, a cliffhanger might be okay because it's an ending, but it's not a conclusion. Does that make sense?
Right. Tools of Destruction used a cliffhanger to set up a hook for getting, particularly Crack in Time, but, also Quest for Booty in its own way. But Crack in Time, the end of that saga, had a resolution.
Right.
It wasn't leaving you hanging on something major to that plot.
Right.
Yes, their adventures are open-ended, but the story with Alistair Azimuth came to a conclusion.
We should explain this a little for 90% of our listeners who have never played Ratchet and Clank.
That is true.
Okay, so this one guy, he's a mentor to Ratchet throughout most of the game. His name is Alistair. But he find out that he made a mistake. And Ratchet's species is the Lombax, and he and Ratchet and Azimuth are the only two left. Alistair and Azimuth. They're the only two left. Alistair accidentally brought the end of the Lombaxes, but he wants to go to this thing that he thinks will be a time machine to bring them back. It turns out it's not really meant to control time, it's meant to keep it. But Alistair goes nuts trying to fix his mistake, to the point where he actually kills Ratchet. Spoiler alerts!
Gee, you just are so unwieldy with those things.
But anyways, okay, fine. Even more spoiler alert.
But spoilers,
Clank brings him back.
Consider going in with spoilers that, the whole thing of Azimuth's journey is that he expects that he can put everything right, and if there's one more casualty that he can also fix,
yeah, because he thinks he's going to save Ratchet in the past too. So that's the way he justifies killing him originally. So
Well, I mean, it goes even further than saving him in that moment. It means keeping Ratchet with his long gone father.
Right. But, so the thing is, like, this is a pretty serious conclusion to a series that is very lighthearted normally, so... I mean, it does end. They managed to talk some sense into him, and he stops the universe from being destroyed by the time machine that he's using incorrectly.
Which ends Azimuth's life instead.
Right. But he does that willingly, so... Heavy stuff, but I think it's still pretty lighthearted, so...
But it's an end.
Mm-hmm.
There's no cliffhanger like, oh, Azimuth's still out there, he might try again. Oh, he's going to find another method to do the exact same thing. It ends. There's nothing more beyond that.
Right. No, I think...
Unlike Tools of Destruction, where they take the robot on Ratchet's back, Clank, away to fulfill his destiny.
Right, but when that happened, that cliffhanger in the original game happened, we had no idea why they took him. A lot of people thought the Zoni weren't even benevolent, that they were evil, that they were going to be revealed to be evil.
That's true.
And they were doing this... Show some evil scheme.
However, we knew there was more coming.
Yeah, we didn't know. There was so uncertainty, but yeah, we knew there was more coming.
It's kind of... I'll go back to Harry Potter because it has so many good examples about it. I'll go back to Harry Potter and talk about the fact that between the books, yes, each year might end, each time look into that capsule might end, but there are elements that continue on. We linger. We don't know how it's going to work out, right?
Until the...
Yeah, cliffhangers... Interim cliffhangers are fine. That has nothing to do. It doesn't affect the whole thing being lighthearted or not.
Right.
Ratchet and Clank generally is a lighthearted thing.
Right.
It's a very simple concept done in a great way for children and people who never grow up.
Right.
You know, like us.
Yep.
But the thing is, in between times, you can use cliffhangers to gain interest, to curry interest in the next.
It's all about the ratings. They gotta continue the will they or won't they subplots. They gotta.
Well, I don't know.
Not about Ratchet, but just me in general. It's like
they tell the story they want to tell, and if that means extending the story to make a proper conclusion, that's different. But generally, we consider that lighthearted. But it has emotional downturns. It has cliffhangers. It has humor. It has mature concepts. All of these things. On the whole, at the end of Ratchet and Clank, at the end of their story, if they just decide to retire, it will not end with a crazy emotional downturn, at least not completely on the low of that.
Right.
It won't end with a cliffhanger as if there's more coming. They'll just end it.
Right.
And so I think that it still qualifies as lighthearted.
Right.
So essentially, all this is a roundabout way of suggesting that if it's truly an ending, you won't see a cliffhanger.
Right. If it's a lighthearted story.
Well, I don't see why you would have a cliffhanger on a heavy story either if there was nothing that actually came up unless it was developmental.
You need to learn about the ways of plotting a story structure. There's sometimes...
What I'm suggesting is that unless something goes into development hell, they're not going to leave something undone.
Or are they? Those are called open endings. To be fair, listeners, I hate
really
this when they do this.
cliffhangers.
Have you ever seen The Birds? It's another classic movie, so I'm assuming you haven't seen it.
Alfred Hitchcock? But no, I haven't seen it.
It ends with no resolution, and I hate it, but that was on purpose. It does it to add to the suspense, so...
Well, I mean, there are some stories that lend themselves to that. Probably a lot in the horror genre, which I would never consider lighthearted in any means.
Unless it's like a horror comedy. Like, I think Zombieland's pretty lighthearted, but to be fair, though, it goes kind of back and forth, doesn't it?
But the main part of that story was pretty ended. It wasn't really open.
Right.
Yes, it's implied they continue doing what they're doing.
There's killing zombies all throughout the world. But they were a family
because
now. There was the four of them. So, including the very lovely Emma Stone, who I totally don't have a crush on.
Totally not at all.
Emma Stone, I will be your Peter Parker if you will be my Gwen Stacy. Oh, wait, maybe they shouldn't be. Dang it, I spoiled that too! Oh my god!
What about Kirsten Dunst and Mary Jane Watson? But anyway...
No, I'm not really into her.
No, not really.
She doesn't do it for me, except for maybe that scene in the rain in the first one.
In the rain and the kissing and when he's upside down, yeah.
Well, that's not the part I'm talking about, but let's just move on, shall we?
Oh, that...
Moving on.
No, I know what scene you're talking about now. But anyway, but it's not really a cliffhanger, is it? An open ending does not imply something desperately you want to understand. It just essentially says, oh, they continue working generally the same way they have.
Right.
Like, most Ratchet games have an open ending. Because they don't want his adventures to stop.
As are most stories that kind of end... like all the Marvel movies, they all kind of have an open ending. as that so
Well,
far.
not counting post-credits scenes because they're set to continue things.
Right. All stories
But
that
I
are
mean-
like episodic like that, they always kind of have sort of open endings too. So,
Well, they want to give you a hook to come back.
sort of a side note, I hate will they or won't they's. It's a cheap way to get people them watching a show. I ended up stop watching The Flash because I was sick and tired of how long it was taking to get these two characters together. Also, last week I was gushing about New Girl. I've stopped watching it too because I don't care about this will they or won't they crap.
Last week?
Last month. You know what I meant, dumbass. I'm just...
Oh, okay, whatever.
I can't carry
I know
your
you
dumb
are, but what am
ass
I?
throughout this-
Hashtag childish comebacks.
You're a childish comeback. That's my childish comeback.
That is your childish comeback.
Anyways. Well, I think
But,
we've
I mean,
talked about cliffhangers to death.
Yeah. How many things have we always spoiled? Okay, well, let's go back
Let's spoil the last part of this episode. I'm going to shoot you.
No,
I've got
we
this
still
gun
got a couple
here.
things to talk
It's going
about.
to travel all the way to Japan.
We still got a couple things to talk about. Like,
No, I know,
one
but
of
I mean, at the
things
end of this
that I'm
episode, I'm going
wondering-
to shoot you.
Well, I mean, we
Spoiler
briefly
alert.
alluded to the story of Kraken Time, which is a very serious entry in the Ratchet and Clank series, which we generally agree seems to be lighthearted. So, with that model in mind, I'm sure you would go back to that example immediately. But can lighthearted stories go dark?
Abso-freaking-lutely. Not just Ratchet and Clank, Harry Potter. Harry Potter gets pretty dark at the end, but it ends happily. Spoiler alert.
Spoilers again for the same thing that we spoiled like 18 times. News.
Okay. No, I think there can be lighthearted elements to a certain story, lighthearted installments to a story, then darker elements to a story. But maybe even if they stay dark, I feel like it doesn't discount the lightheartedness of the earlier ones. So,
So, like Toy Story 3.
yeah, like Toy Story 3, I think it ends more bittersweet than the other ones. I still think it's mostly kind of lighthearted.
Well, I'm saying that your earlier hypothetical of them getting in the incinerator, would that make Toy Story not lighthearted?
I mean, as a series, no. But Toy Story 1 and 2 would still be lighthearted. So,
Okay. I just figured I'd
hey
clarify
kids,
that position.
look at this great series from my childhood. It's called Toy Story. Spoiler alert, they all die.
I mean,
Those will
we
be
just
my
give
children.
spoiler alerts up the wazoo because he loves them so much.
I love
So here's
scarring them.
my thought. You know, I think it's more effective. I think because there's lighthearted, that it's more effective to have the dark moment.
Right. You need to have that contrast.
But I don't think it can be considered lighthearted anymore if you have so many moments of that kind, like I said earlier. But, you know, if the character in question overcomes that kind of thing,
Right.
we kind of get this even more satisfying sense. You know, we feel more satisfaction in the character being his or her normal, which is to say lighthearted, positive self.
Right.
And so it's rewarding to see that kind of thing.
Well, a
in
lot
my
of good
mind.
stories should be a pendulum. Like, there should be lighthearted moments and then dark moments, and they should complement each other. Like, I love writing humor. I will always write humor. And I think no matter how dark my story of mine can get, or how the serious the subject matter, I will still always have humor, because I think it provides an effective contrast. A lot of darker moments in stories that are normally funny work better because the funny moments are funny. That way, when the
Or
dark
even
moments
if
gets
it's not
dark...
used as a contrast, if it's just used as an element of your story.
Right, so like, if a story that's normally funny suddenly gets dark, people take that dark element even more seriously, I feel, than if the story was always dark. Because it creates more of a contrast. You're like, oh crap, things have gotten serious. So...
Let me put on my serious face.
Yes, exactly. No fun faces now. Let's do the classic theater two-face mask thing. I don't forget.
The two mask thing.
What is it called? Oh, for God. Triumph and Agony, right?
Tragedy and comedy, I believe. Tragedy and comedy are the two masks, if I remember correctly.
Well, yeah, but I wasn't sure if that was the name, if there was a name for both. I don't know.
Well,
Listeners,
tragic
email
comic,
us
I
in.
guess,
Oh,
but-
speaking of which. Oh, no, I'll get to that later.
What?
We'll get to it later. Just hold your horses. I'm not going to spoil this one. Like I've spoiled...
Oh, wow. How thoughtful.
I've already spoiled they're going to shoot you at the end of this episode, so just... So I'm not going to spoil this part right
You
before
can't
that.
keep doing the podcast without me, I thought. I guess I'm not that important to you anymore.
Oh, you know, this is a Valentine's month. It's all about breaking hearts. It's all about putting them together.
Breaking hearts? No, that's Singles Awareness Day. Valentine's Day is all about love.
This is about people who were together and then are broken apart, through complex
so
struggles.
Apparently our friendship is breaking apart.
Yes, because I got this gun here, and it's going to traverse across the entire Pacific Ocean.
The bullet or the gun? If you give me the gun, it won't do anything.
Okay, the bullets, and then followed later by the gun, which will tap your lifeless body as a joke.
I see.
Anyways,
as a joke, because my body will already be lifeless.
I think we should wrap some of this up, though. And not because I'm really getting eager to kill you. I am, but let's ignore that.
Okay. It's not has nothing to do with that desire.
So
Jeez.
I think we should summarize the key differences between a lighthearted story and a darker one. In my opinion, it's more about idealism versus cynicism. Is the world an overall good place, or is the world overall a crappy place that we all have to deal with? What theme is that going for? The story going for? Are you hopeful, or this is what it is?
I think you're onto something, because if you look at the cycle of a life when you're young,
mm-hmm.
you have all those dreams and they change every day, and you've got all of this world in front of you. It's your oyster kind of a thing. That you're an idealist. You expect the best of the world, but the older you get, the more cynical you become, the more jaded you become.
And then you want to be a kid again. Just like when you're a kid, you want to be an adult. Life
the whole
sucks.
Youth is wasted on the young thing. But I think the key difference between lighthearted and, for lack of a better term, heavy-hearted, is how much they ask the consumer to bear.
Or dark-hearted.
If it's too much, it can't really be lighthearted, can it?
Mm-mm.
If there is not much depth, it probably is lighthearted. I like your comparison, too, because, again, as I said, the outlook of people, children are idealists naturally.
Mm-hmm.
But adults become jaded, they become cynics naturally.
Some adults
especially
remain idealists.
If, tragedies happen to people in life. Life gets in the way of us maintaining our idealist nature, right?
Right.
If you have somebody die for the first time, it's a tragedy, and you don't know how to react, and everything changes. And similarly, other things happening in life, like breaking up with a girlfriend or boyfriend, for our female listeners.
Or
people who are more interested in that kind of
thing. There's 70 different genders and a billion different sexual preferences.
A billion different combinations. So all of those people who are interested in men.
Yes.
Anyway, let's
not be discriminatory. That was last episode.
Losing a job. Yeah, that was last. That was the whole reason we said, what was it?
African American lady folk.
Missing Things, or whatever the movie's called. I can't even remember
Hidden
the title.
Figures. It's still a great movie, but let's not rip it off, shall we?
But it's not something that we could feasibly, replicate.
Therefore, we're racist. That's how it works. All right, go on.
Yeah, I guess so. But tragedies that happen on a personal level, losing a dear parent, a friend. When I was in high school, one of my classmates committed suicide.
Mm-hmm.
Dealing with that.
Yeah, I remember that. I remember that. Oh,
yep.
You were in so much pain.
And I never dealt with it for too long. That's not a story that I'm going to divulge here, but the idea is that
maybe I won't shoot you after all. Maybe you just spared yourself. Or maybe you made me feel so sorry for you, I'm just going to help you and just end it all. We'll see, won't we?
We'll see. If there's another episode with Matt David here, then you'll know, listeners. But anyway, point being that those things naturally change your outlook on life. Those things make you more jaded to the way the world is as opposed to the way the world could be.
Mm-hmm.
The kid version is lighthearted fare, which is why we associate it with kid friendly.
Right.
The second, more in depth, it's far more emotional. It's heavy hearted or serious fare. You can't really call it lighthearted. Sure, both of those have the moments of the opposite. The man in Up, for example,
right.
He's been through a lot of life. He's seen a lot of things.
Right.
And so living those moments,
10 minutes worth of montage.
You see that. You see that, and that's a darker moment in a lighthearted story. But heavy-hearted stuff, very serious stuff, will also still have those moments that are funny, that are humorous, and not as deep. More shallow, which is a little easier to enjoy, more lighthearted. So,
right.
I mean, you mentioned contrast earlier, and having contrast...
Yeah.
Those moments. You can't have one that's dark all the time. You can't have one that's light all the time.
Yeah, I think a good story should have both. On varying levels.
Depending on which way it leans, it certainly changes it certainly changes which you classify it as.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yeah, I think we pretty much summed it up here.
The key difference being, how much are we asking you to deal with? Are we asking you to cope, or are we just asking you to enjoy?
Escapism versus whatever copism, whatever the word is for the other one.
Facing reality, I guess.
Realism, I guess. Escapism versus realism. Bloody hell. I'm an English major. Why do I not know that? Anyways. I mean, you're a music major. How do you know this?
Because English probably would have been my second. But anyway.
Music would not even been on my list, so you're probably right.
There's a reason I edit for you.
Yeah.
Whether you like it or not.
I don't edit your music. I just let you do your own thing.
Oh, so you're suggesting I should stop editing your writing?
I mean, let's see, where's this gun here? You
might have to right now, if you're going to shoot me with a bullet,
I'm going to try to do
if you're going to send a bullet all the way to Japan just to end my miserable existence, then I guess you wouldn't have to deal with that anymore, would you?
Oh wait, here's the thing. This bullets travel at 1,000 miles per hour or something like that. So okay, in a couple hours that'll get to you. All right, so we can keep doing the podcast now. All right. Let me know when that gets to you, by the way.
Yeah, sure. I'll get right on that.
Sounds good. All right, so should we wrap this up?
I guess so.
Forever, I guess.
Bullet with my name on it.
I mean, maybe you'll get. You've got time before it gets to you. Maybe you'll get some sort of force field device built up.
Sure, in the 6 hours or whatever that I actually have.
I mean,
right.
Let's do the math. Let's not do the math. I don't care enough. All right.
I'll say it this way. There's a song that I was gifted from a composer who has a Japanese wife. He's an American.
Right.
But he wrote the song from my predecessor, who had the same role I do now.
Right.
But it was in Japan, and the song mentions 6,000 miles. So that's, the minimum. It's probably between 6 and 7.
No. Okay, well, I know
1,000 miles per hour is
you're
7
16
hours.
time zones ahead, which means you're 8 time zones behind. So that's the distance you are. So that's a third of the Earth. The Earth's circumference is about 22,000 miles.
I thought you said you weren't doing the math. Anyways.
Damn it! I've been tricked by my own... I don't even know what I've been tricked by. Maybe I'll just shoot myself after this.
Sir. Maybe you should what?
I think I'll just shoot myself right now. After this.
No, don't do that. You have so much to do with your life. You're only 25, even if your hair's already thinning.
Oh, thank you for reminding me.
I'm just bringing it full circle.
I'm dead.
Dead people don't whisper like that. Anyway. They don't whisper at all. If you're dead, you're gone. If you're dying, you might be able to say something. Anyways. Well, listeners, there you have it. A bullet to his head has done him in, and there's one on its way to me that will magically get here in a few hours.
That joke was so funny.
I guess this is the final episode of the Ritwit, so thanks for bearing with our inanity. And remember, us two twits that talk about writting may not be great, but we know we are better than you.
Indeed. Hey, by the way, spoiler alert! I didn't really shoot a bullet your way. You're safe.
And spoiler alert, he didn't really die. So I guess we'll see you next time, listeners, but hopefully you'll tune in anyway!
Alright, so long. My beautiful hair, where is it gonna go? Where is it going? Why doesn't my hair love me anymore?
Apparently his hair is light of heart, too.
I never drink. I'm gonna go to the bar right now. See you guys later. Peace out.
From Matt David.
And Matt Donald. I guess we'll see you next time. Maybe.